about today is going to line up with everything. And I'm going to start off with some quick hard facts, and then we'll move into the work of creating your own brand stories. Oh, thank you. Look at you. Oh, and who am I? I had a quick introduction already, but here are some of the brands that our business has worked with. I started off as an artist and an actor who really didn't want to wait tables. And after doing photography and then moving into web design, I started to cultivate a team of like-minded creatives. And now we're a team of 4. And what I've really learned over the years from doing marketing on my own, doing marketing for business, and then studying and teaching at Columbia University, what I've learned is that storytelling is key. And I have the same exact skills that you guys have as well. My friends over here to the right of me, I'm going to ask you to go into the room to the side. Thank you. I'm really trying hard not to shout. Okay. So, what are we going to do today? We are going to talk about brand stories, because when you introduce yourself at events like this, you want to be able to create an introduction that not only opens doors, but makes you memorable. And if you've done some of that this weekend, you've noticed that it could be hard to tell people what you do in 1 or 2 lines. And so that's what we're going to do today. We can go to the next slide. And you can go to the next one. All right, so I'm starting with some hard facts, because I want you to know how important it is for you to be active online. So if we think about the commercial decline that we've been seeing in the last few years, from 2010 to 2024, there's been a 33% decrease, right? It's gone from a $60 billion industry to $40 billion. And digital, on the other hand, has gone from $31 billion to $200 billion. We can go to the next slide. And what we've seen in this time is that there is a lot of streaming happening, right? And so there was a peak around 2021. There were so many new pieces of work. We saw so many things coming out. And then it has shifted, right? Currently, content is being cut dramatically. There are tons of write-offs that are coming. I'm speaking to the room that totally understands this, right? So as we're seeing a build in social, we're seeing a decline when it comes to our industry. And so what does that mean? What's next? These streaming platforms are colliding, and the focus is shifting from quantity to profit. Not to mention they're not worried about quality, right? And so they are only focusing on sure bets. They don't want the experimental content unless they can get it for really, really cheap. So when you look at the other parts of our economy, right, when we look at YouTube or creator-owned platforms or direct-to-consumer, these things are lifting. So it is so much easier to get your content out and to get it seen by the masses than it's ever been before. And this has just been growing in the last recent years. When we are looking at what's next, we want to focus in on those 10K to 500K budgets, right? A lot of the films that you're probably working on in this room, specific audiences, niches, and creator-owned IP. That is king right now. We can keep going. So while they are trying to be safe, we now have an industry who is dying to do the work that they actually care about, and we have a society that's hungry for that too. And I think it's a perfect mix. So I have some examples here, just so you can see in real time what people are doing. Let's think about Ava, yes? She has been known for building her network before you need it. This is what you can learn from her work. She spends lots of time boosting other creators, making sure that you have created a sense of community, so when they need you, or when you need someone, you have that community already built. We can keep going. Then we have someone like Mark, right? Who is, I think, what most people think about when we say, let's get on social media, let's be online, let's be visible. He's learning and teaching as he's learning. And so some people don't want to work in visibility, make their mistakes in visibility. But there's a lot to be said about people who are this transparent because there's so much room for knowledge and growth in this space. I'm going to switch to the other side where we switch slides. And then we have Rachel. Now, it doesn't matter how you feel about Rachel's actual performances, right? The fact is, she's been able to go from being on YouTube to being a leading lady, well-known actor. And it is because of how she showed up on social media. And then we have Megan. I think she is probably one of our golden examples right now of someone who has used social media to create a career that we can all be proud of. And then we have Miles. He is a voice actor, grew his platform super quickly, and now he helps brands as a creative producer create work that is going to serve the masses. Okay, so that's my spiel so that you do this exercise with me, okay? So we're focusing in on brand stories. A brand story is who are you, what do you do, and why does it matter? That's what you want to be able to share with people. Yeah, no worries. Yes, we're looking at who you are, what you do, and why it matters. And so if you think about it as a through line for people who work on scripts, work on character development, what is the through line that's going to be ever present? So that could be how you're showing up online on your social, in your emails, what you're saying in your pitches. There's always a through line to who you are and what you do. And the brand stories are based on that. It is not your resume. It is not a sales pitch. It is how you want to introduce yourself to people. All right, so there's a couple of data points here. You can read whichever you want. The one that I'm going to focus on us is this 54%, and I think this is interesting to everyone. There is a study that says 54% of Gen Z and millennials get their platform recommendations, what they're watching on streaming, from social platforms. So we're working with big brands every day who, believe it or not, don't spend as much of a big budget as you think when it comes to social platforms, when it comes to working with influencers. And so a lot of these things are a little bit more attainable than we like to think. So if you have an extra $300 to $500, that is one video that can get you some extra visibility. Of course, the most beneficial ones are a little bit more expensive than that, but we can ground that in reality in thinking about how much these bigger brands are actually spending. Another wonderful example. I'm letting you lean on reading more than talking because I'm projecting my voice from my theater training. But we all know Greta, right? Billion-dollar director. What is the brand story that we think about when we think about her? What do you know about her? It's not because you've heard it through the grapevine. You know it because that has been selected as the themes that are going to be associated with her brand. So every interview that she's on, these are the things she's going to make sure to talk about. Another great example, Barry, right? His struggle became his story. We can use these same things for ourselves. We can go to the next one. Ryan Coogler. We're all very impressed with him right now. Yes, he has created somewhat of a movement, right? And you know and you trust his work because of what we say about him online. Those seeds are started and planted by your brand stories. All right, so we're working on 3 frameworks today. You get to choose which one. Most of you are very familiar with these frameworks, but how often have you turned them around on yourself? So we have the origin story, where you started, and the movement that you're creating. The hero's journey, we all love an underdog, right? And then the community narrative, building something bigger than yourself. So let's look at 2 examples before we dive in. The origin story, your inciting incident, your why, and then you empowering others. This is probably one of the rooms that I don't have to over-explain these concepts because we get it, we use them all the time. And then we have our hero's journey. Where were you? What's the disruption, the crisis, the struggle, and then what did you learn? And how can we package that to share it over and over again? Our community narrative, the gap, what's missing in the marketing, how we assemble people around this, the impact that we have, and then of course our invitation to join. So let's think about A24 movies. Now, I don't know about you, but if I see something with this logo on it, I'm watching it. You don't really have to sell me on it. I know because of the work that they've put out and the brand stories associated with this company that it's going to be quality and it's going to line up with a lot of the things that I'm looking for when it comes to interesting work. They have an origin story, they have a community narrative, and they also have an innovation story. Usually we're stacking these brand stories to create a full brand. So these are some of the things they're known for. They build community, they champion diverse voices, art over commerce. We give filmmakers creative control and anti-establishment. Now, 2 of these are in black, right? Because these 2, as they have grown, can be argued depending on who you're talking to. Anti-establishment, well, they're worth a lot of money now. So that is not true, right? But because of how they show up, there can still be conflict in the work that you're doing as long as you're still giving the output that makes people believe it. And then art over commerce, they are some of the best marketers that we have right now. It's just not true. But if you look at their work, you can't really argue that they're against that. And then just to give an example for actors, right? Personal brands. She has her origin story, her transformation arc, and her anti-brand story, which we didn't talk about, but just to give you a little insight there, she is known for not doing typical celebrity behavior. We love that for her. So when she shows up to red carpets or she shows up to events and she's awkward and it's weird, we're like, oh, that's just her. We love it, right? And we love to look at examples like this because we want to look at what we already have, what we're known for, or the things that we might not love about ourselves so much, the things that we might shy away from, and turn that into parts of our brand story. These are our 3 frameworks. Think about one that you want to flesh out right now. I'm going to give you some time to work on it a little bit. But do you want to explain how you got here? Do you want to show resilience and inspire someone? Or are you trying to build a team or movement? I have some questions I'm going to pop up and we'll jump into those. But any questions before that? I kind of gave you a lot really quickly to sell you on this activity here. Any questions? Yes.
Do you have a blend of more than one, or do you really want to stay on one lane?
You can definitely have a blend of more than one. Some of the examples we were looking at had a couple of them. This is just probably the most well-known 3 frameworks that you would be recognizing. So that's why we're starting with these 3 today. But absolutely, the average brand is going to have at least 3 to 4 of these brand stories because you don't want to be saying the same story each and every time. But if you think about any brand, any celebrity, anyone, there's at least 3 stories that everybody knows about them, and that's on purpose. Yes.
Are you separating these in any way, like on via platform or any item, like an individual, a marketing funnel for brand awareness versus a buyer? Are you separating those?
Yes, we are. Not in this conversation today, but yes, absolutely. Because if you think about, so he's asking about the customer journey, which is a funnel. You start at awareness, you go down to consideration. We need to hear different stories at different parts of our customer journey in order for us to want to engage. At the beginning, we want to hear a story that's relatable to as many people as possible. But as we get closer down, the more specific the story is to the people who follow you, the more helpful it's going to get to making those people the ones that go out and talk about you and spread your amazing word. Any other questions? Okay, if you have something to write with, fantastic. If not, you can use the Notes app on your phone. I'm going to pop up some questions. I just want you to brain dump the answers on your phone, okay? Keep this part to yourself. In a second, I'm going to have you share this with one of the people next to you, and we're going to kind of throw these brand stories out. But I'm going to give you a framework before we do. All right, let's do this next. Okay, here are the questions. I'm going to read them a couple of times because I know it's kind of small. The first question you're going to answer is, what is the moment that made you realize this is what I want to do? Most of you know this. You've answered this in an interview, or you've thought about this. This is your motivating thing, right? The next question is, what decision did you make that other people thought was crazy? What decision did you make that other people thought was crazy? You might not have an answer to all of these questions. You want to lean into the ones that feel the most true. The next question is, what do you want to be known for beyond your credits and skills? Yes, you want to be a filmmaker. Yes, you want people to see your work. But is there a community or voices that you want to amplify that you want to do outside of when you're actively filming? That's important to note down. And if you could whisper one truth to everyone in your field, what would it be? How to use a microphone. Those are the things that people build complete campaigns on when it comes to social campaigns. This is the thing you think you're doing wrong, and this is how I'm going to help you fix it, right?
We are talking about a personal truth, something that's like a secret about you?
No, something about your industry. It could be a secret about you. It could be that I decided to never care about interviews, and it frees me up, and it's why I'm able to show up truthfully. And then the last one here is, what's the thread connecting your random experiences? So for me, it's always been storytelling. I have ADHD, right? And so for a long time, I was like, why can't I stick to anything? I'm doing photography, and I'm doing website design, and I'm doing everything. But I realized that my through line was storytelling. And then I also realized that everything that I do is forward by creatives. I don't want to work on your website if you don't have anything creative to say, if you do not have a point of view. And so we take these things that don't make as much sense and we thread them together. So go ahead and start brainstorming some thoughts about yourself. Every 2 minutes, I'll say the next question since it's a little hard to read. And then we'll move on to the next section, and then we'll share a little bit. And if you're unable to write anything down and you just want to brainstorm these things so that you have it for when we go peer-to-peer, that's great as well. Yeah, so I think I'm thinking of Issa Rae right now because she's on one of these slides. And one thing that she says, you've probably heard it a million times, she says, network across, don't network up. That's something that she probably would want to tell everybody. It's not a secret, but it's something special enough that you probably would only share with people that you were really trying to help. So the questions that we answered at the beginning helps you to frame everything. You just need those answers. And then from there, you should be able to see, do you want to focus on your origin story, your hero's journey, or your community narrative? Because it's different for everyone. If you're focusing on your origin story, I have 3 more questions for you, and the same for heroes, and the same for community narrative. I love working workshops in a way that you leave with something. So the more you can invest a little bit of time while we're in this room answering these questions and nailing down some things, as you walk away from here today and continue to introduce yourself this weekend for the rest of the day, you will have a different thing that you can try on. So for origin story, again, this is explaining how you got here. Our 3 questions are, what was the incident that changed your path? And sometimes, you're like, I don't remember really, but I know it had to be something about this, and then you get creative, and then you add the details and add the story, and you use your storytelling skills to really fill it out. But if you have an amazing memory, that can be very powerful. What's the incident that changed your path? The thing that you said, no more, I'm never doing this again, or something must be done about this. And then think about all of the other people you've heard interviews from and how many times you've heard this story. What belief drives all your work? And how does your past prepare you for what you do now? And then we have hero's journey, those 3 questions. What obstacle almost stopped you? What failing or struggle, what did it teach you? What do you know now that your younger self desperately needed to hear? That's amazing because that's probably what the person coming up after you needs to hear, right? Hero's journey. We all love to see somebody succeed. Half of the people we looked at on here you love them, or you're enticed by their work because of the story that's behind it. So what obstacles almost stopped you? What did failing or struggle teach you? And what do you know now that your younger self should have learned? And then for the last one, this is community narrative. What gap did you notice that other people were ignoring? I've heard beautiful stories about that this weekend. What are you bringing together, or who are you bringing together, and why? Why is that important? And what becomes possible when your community collaborates? We're writing down these things and we're thinking about these things. If there's a screenshot that you want to take is this, right? As you're thinking through these stories, I need you to look for and create moments where you can add specific details. Give me the name of the coffee shop. Give me the name of the coffee that you ordered while you were there. These specific details helps people to see the story, right? Gosh, room of storytellers, you know. As specific as you can be is what we want. And then what unexpected terms can you lay out very clearly? I did this, but this happened. What shifts or changes can you highlight? And then vulnerability, yes.
Can you just go back to that last slide just really quickly?
Yeah.
I just want to see that last.
Yeah. You could take a screenshot of this one too. Also, I'm gonna give you a chance to get all of the slides. I'll send you all the slides. Don't worry.
I don't know if that got it, but yeah, thank you for
Yeah. Vulnerability. This can be anything, but normally we're hearing doubt, we're hearing fear, we're hearing failure, because we want to connect to people, we want them to feel something. You marry that with your specific details, ooh, now they are emotionally invested in your story, and they feel something for you. We're gonna be great storytellers and great marketers, and we're gonna be as truthful as possible, but this is happening in a very negative way online when it comes to marketing as well. So how can we feed into this that's already happening? Because we are the storytellers and we are the ones who know how to move the people and make it work for the work that we are creating. And then we have transformation. We talked a lot about that. And then universal emotions, feelings that anyone can relate to. Find as many of these in your story as humanly possible, and you want to structure it around these details. These are the parts that you don't want to let out. So when you are telling the same story over 30 seconds because you're introducing yourself versus 2 minutes because you're in an interview, you want to shift the details and the things that you cover based off of who you're talking to and how much time you have. And then here are some hooks for you to keep in mind. They're great to start with. Mine is always, when I tell my brand story, I've never had a full-time job, right? And it's a great way to catch people's attention. They're like, wait, what? Maybe not in this room so much, right? But usually in a room where I'm telling them how to sell their product, they're like, wait, what? Start with the moment. Okay, so that was like a statement, something that makes people feel like, huh, what, excuse me? Then we have some sort of call to arms, a movement, a moment. For Rachel, she started her YouTube when she was 16 years old. And she did her first YouTube cover. Automatically, we're like, oh, wow. We want to hear where this story is going. Start with a question. One of mine is, what if marketing didn't have to feel like marketing? Because I do not believe that it needs to be. Start with a question. And then start with a confession. I love hearing actors talk about how they almost quit because we just need to hear it sometimes, right? And so a confession that makes everybody feel seen is a great way to start.
I feel like this is what pastors use to create their sermons every week.
Right? You'd be surprised. It's crazy. Okay, so you are going to create a story that you are going to share with one person in this room. Your opening hook. You need one sentence that's going to grab somebody's attention. You don't need to write down the full sentence. Just make a dot. If you're like, no full-time job, you don't have to write out the sentence. Just know what your first bullet point is. And then you're going to go into your body, right? Those are the pieces in between, following the framework that we talked about, and I'll put them back up on the screen. And then your connection, linking to the work that you're doing now. It's not going to be perfect. It's actually probably going to be a fumbling mess, and that's okay. But give it a try. So take a minute. Absolutely. The body, so depending on the framework, it's going to be different. When we talked about the origin story or we spoke about the hero's journey, that's the meat of it. So have a interesting hook. Tell us your origin story. Tell us your community narrative. Tell us your hero's journey. And then link it to your work now. You were just saying, oh, this is the work that I do with people who have lost their homes. And I said back, now how do you give that back to them and give them something to do with it, right? Even if it's not something you're selling, even if the work that you're doing is with young mothers, it could be something as simple as, give a little bit extra love to the mothers in your life because things are not appreciated as much as it should be. Whatever it is. Of course, if you have a project, it would be something a little bit more full. Any questions? Give it a try. And then we're going to have you guys introduce yourself, and then maybe we'll have somebody come up and do theirs for everyone. But I want you to try sharing one of your brand stories. But I have some guidelines. When you're sharing your stories, just share. No disclaimers. No, oh, this is what doesn't make sense. No, just share. Just like you wouldn't go up and give a disclaimer before you perform something, just share it. Don't apologize. And then be quiet. Give them a second, and then they will respond. Make sure to listen for what resonated. Don't focus on just what they liked, right? What made them feel something? What was interesting for them? And then everyone will give feedback. If someone shares with you, please do them the pleasure of giving them some feedback. Some things that you can share is what grabbed me was, that's very helpful, right? What I learned about you is this. What I want to learn more about is this. And the part that felt most authentic was this. And then if you started with this, oh, I would really feel connected. Thank you guys for sharing. I know sometimes that's hard or overwhelming, especially when you just started brainstorming those things. So thank you for sharing. That was fantastic. Before we run, I did want to leave some time for an open Q&A. So let me say a few things before we do that, which is, we talked about a bunch of different stories that you should have. This is probably 3 of, I think we have 9 frameworks that we work through. We do these things called content intensives, where we take someone who doesn't know how to show up online at all, and we put them through 3 days of creating content. Some of this content never sees the light of day, and they don't want it to see the light of day, and that allows them to be a little bit freer. But by the end of those 3 days, we have an idea of how they're going to show up on social media, what they're good at, and we're not trying to push them into a box. We're trying to create a box around who they already are. And it allows them to be free and not say, oh, let me take a picture of every meal that I make because I'm trying to show up on social media. There's a framework for how they're going to do it and what parts of themselves they're going to share. So for the stories that you worked on just now, right? Your hook and your outcome, you can share that as your Instagram bio, right? You make a professional version of what you just shared, and you can put that on your LinkedIn. If you have a fuller version with more details, that's something that you would use in an interview or something that you would put on a website. And then I like to add this for my actors. There's always a self-tape that asks you to tell a quick story about yourself, and you have these in your back pocket to always be able to pull out. Awesome. So I want to take some questions, but I want to leave you with this. Your story will continue to evolve, and that's the beautiful part about it. This isn't your forever story. This is just your right now story. Awesome. Any questions? We have about 8 minutes for questions. Yes.
So a lot of filmmakers are usually at where they have to be marketing themselves and learn that aspect, which is incredibly important. But there's also, I think, sometimes a value to having an outside perspective on yourself because we can get in such weeds of what we want our image to be. How do you recommend us balancing that kind of juxtaposition?
Not doing it alone. I think it's important for filmmakers to think about, one, I think it's nice to take a step back and don't think as a filmmaker, but think about all of the other filmmakers and what the general public knows about them. Not what everybody in the industry knows about them, but what is the stories that the general public needs to know about a filmmaker in order to support them. And then you can get deeper and deeper till the point where you're looking at those filmmakers from the inside of the industry. So that'll give you an outside idea. I always say start with your competitors of what other people are doing and how they're showing up. And then you want to shift it to yourself. And if you do it by yourself, it is, like you said, very easy to get stuck in it. So I suggest you work either with another filmmaker. These questions are super helpful, but figure out what it is that you want people to know about you, your through line through all of the work that you're creating as of now, and again, that'll shift. But I think it's perspective, and of course, looking at your competitors as well. Yeah.
So trying to create this business profile or persona and all this stuff can be a full-time job in itself.
Yes, that's why you hire us. Absolutely. It is a full-time job, but there's so many people who are trying to do it as well. And most people will work better when they have somebody that they're accountable for. And so it can just be another artist that you're like, hey, let's get together and let's nail down these brand stories. Let's figure out how we want to show up. Or even better, let's go ahead and rent a studio for $50 an hour. You take that in, I'll take this in, let's record some content. Yes.
So there's me, the person, but there's also my company.
Yeah.
Do I focus on one at a time or one versus the other in order?
Great question. Always look at them together and then figure out what kind of business you have, right? So some production companies like A24 that we were looking at, the average person doesn't know who's behind the brand. If that's the kind of brand that you want, then we can separate it a little bit. Of course, you'd have an owner story or a founder story, but the brand can have a story of its own. And then if you're creating a space like we were looking at Ava, her production company is very much attached to her. It's a privilege to have a production company attached to a big brand like that. But sometimes it's done on purpose. Sometimes it's done, the separation is done on purpose. So I would, to start, because you probably don't know which way you're leaning, I would answer the question as a whole. And then if you see things that conflict, then I would pull those two things apart. But on average, right now, our audience wants to see you as a person. And so you have to have a really good reason for separating them out. On average, you're doing it with a team, it's not just you, whatever. Most of the time, your audiences want to see the person behind the brand. There's so much disbelief when it comes to corporations and businesses and things like that. If you can make yourself feel human, that is the best thing you can do. We probably have time for one more question. Yes.
That made me think of something. I feel like this idea of making everything personal almost started with COVID because like everybody became so disconnected, so people are looking for connection. Is that
I think as a marketer, I've been pushing these things forever. It wasn't until the pandemic that everybody was like, oh my God, you're right, I gotta do this. I gotta do this right now, because there was nothing else that people can rely on besides the internet. And I think as a society, we leaned into that during the pandemic because of loneliness. But I think there's some correlations there. But I think it's been a trend for a while now that people want to know the people that they're buying from. They want to invest in something. That's what was so cool about, I think we heard earlier this weekend about 213 and how they're giving opportunities for their regular viewers to talk to the filmmakers and connect with them and invest in their new projects, because they know the thread or the curtain of Hollywood has been pulled back in such a real way right now that they know most of us are not rolling in the dough. They know that it's hard. They know that these corporations are really trying us, for a lack of a better word, and they want to support. I think I went a little bit farther than your question, but I hope I answered your question. Okay, yes. One more? Any more? Awesome.
How do you engage with, you've got the community you can create on Instagram or other platforms, but how do you create a dialogue and keep keep a relationship.
Talk about things that they care about. So can I use you as an example? What's your production company, or what do you do?
I'm a filmmaker.
And what kind of films do you make?
Documentary.
Documentary about anything or about something specific?
About a human connection.
Great. Here are my terrible examples, right? But hopefully it'll inspire something in you, right? So human connection. Everybody wants human connection. Pick one topic and start creating content around that. Maybe it's how our screens have separated us, right? And you can use facts, or if you feel comfortable getting on camera, you can come on camera and tell different stories about how we're separating. Create a brand that has conversations already happening so that you've done that. Amazing. How are you talking about it online? Because, yeah, what you don't want is you don't want to say, here's the piece of my film. But instead, maybe there's one character in your film that has one specific story. Tell their specific story on social.
It's also my story as well. So
Give me a nugget of your story, like a talking point.
is I drew geographic art. I lived in a van for a year and a half. I was in France and I drew geographic art with my van, and I interviewed people, strangers, and I asked questions: what's love, what's freedom, what's your relationship to your parents, to death. So it's a deep conversation.
That is amazing. That is prime. That's a perfect example. So I would ask yourself, do you want? Oh, I would say, do you want to be on camera? Do you want to make videos, or do you just want to make faceless content? If you were to say you wanted to make videos, I would say, if you have a van, you still have the van, get out in front of your van, turn on your camera, figure out a hook that you can start with, and talk about how I was so desperate for connection. I got in my van and I traveled X amount of miles to talk to people.
But this is the thing, like I've made the movie because I don't want to do the social media. I want someone to do the social media for me. Because it's not my job. I'm a filmmaker.
Jazelle is available.
So then either what you do, you either spend time or you spend money. It sounds like you don't want to, you want to spend money. So you either, there you go.
Actually, I have the same problem because I am not a social media guy to kind of promote.
Yeah.
But we can do what she's talking about.
Do you know how many van people online right now tell their story? Hire some influencers. Or mimic the kind of content they're creating and get an actor who's just happy to have content for themselves as well, and help script or help create frameworks of the videos that they're going to create on your behalf, always talking and creating a through line to the film that you're making without giving it all away. So that way you're creating an audience for the thing without sharing the thing too much.
We're central casting. We're central casting. I'm all in.
There you go.
But the point of that is what at the end?
The point of that is to have an audience that you can send to watch your thing when it gets picked up, or so you can send to YouTube if that's the platform. Or do you know how many films are on Netflix that do not get watched? They've gotten picked up, they thought that was gonna be the thing, but they're not getting the eyeballs because there's so much competition. Netflix isn't promoting your thing. You need to promote your thing. Now, a lot of people can get on social media and just talk and get the eyeballs, but if that is not the case for you, you just have to be a little bit more strategic. And you have a beautiful story. It would be very easy for you to start to build that connection. I gotta stop talking because they're looking at me. But I'm here, I'll be hanging out, and I'm gonna take more questions. However, this QR code, if you scan it and put your email address in there, I will send you the slides, so you have all of the slides. Thanks so much.